Hey guys, Henning from Motorcyclist magazine. Do you have squeaky brakes or dirty brake fluid? Maybe it's time for a brake service. I'll show you how to do a hydraulic brake overhaul in this video from the MC Garage. Keeping your bike's brakes in top condition is of critical importance, both for performance and for safety. If your brakes are screeching, your brake fluid is low or dark, or your rotors are looking a little gouged up, it's time to give your brakes some TLC. Start by checking the brake fluid level. If your bike doesn't have a translucent reservoir like we do on this bike, it likely has a window you can peek through to check that the fluid is between the low and the high marks. You'll also want to take note of the fluid color. If it's dark, that's a sure sign that it's getting old. If the fluid is low, you're going to want to top it up, but not before checking the condition of the brake pads. The brake fluid level will drop as the pads wear, so if your fluid is low, make sure you check your brake pads. Sometimes you can sneak a peek through the back of the caliper, but if not, you're going to need to remove the caliper and take a look at the pads. These pads are actually in pretty good shape. They've got a decent amount of friction material left, but we've got a brand new set of EBC pads here, so we're just going to go ahead and replace them. You'll need to push the pistons back in their bores to make room for the new, thicker brake pads. But before you do, take the cap off the reservoir, because as you push the pistons back, fluid is going to backfill into the reservoir. Keep tabs on how much fluid is flowing into it. Draw it off if necessary to keep it from overfilling and spilling onto your bike. A few things you don't want to do during this process include pulling the brake lever when the caliper is off the bike and getting brake fluid anywhere on your motorcycle. Brake fluid is bad for paint, so if you get some on your bike, make sure you wipe it up with soap and water right away. Install your new pads in the caliper and reinsert any locating pins or springs. This caliper is ready to go, but before we reinstall it, we're going to inspect the rotor. Spin the rotor and sight a line down its surface to see if it runs true, and also check for any obvious damage like cracks or gouging. If there's any deep scoring, that's a good indicator that you probably need a new rotor, and you should also check the thickness of the disc and compare it against the spec that's listed in your owner's manual. Even if your disc is in good shape, it's a good idea to dress the surface with a Scotch-Brite pad and some brake cleaner. Reinstall your caliper and tighten the bolts to the spec listed in your owner's manual. Having come this far, we might as well replace the brake fluid. Its color is a good indication of its age and condition, and believe me, this bike needs it. This is new brake fluid, and this is the stuff that I pulled out of the reservoir. To bleed the brakes, you're going to need a few things. You need some fresh brake fluid, a receptacle to bleed into, a length of hose that fits over the bleeder bolt, and a wrench to crack that bleeder bolt. Or you can invest in one of these mini bleeders from Motion Pro. It integrates the wrench with a length of hose and has an internal check valve, so all you have to do is crack the bleeder bolt free and pump fresh fluid through the system by pumping the brake lever. Make sure you're adding fresh fluid to the reservoir as the level goes down, and once you see clear fluid come out of the hose, you're done. If you don't have the Motion Pro tool, things get a little more tedious. Step 1 is to put your wrench on the bleeder bolt, then slide your bleeder hose in place. Pull the brake lever to pressurize the system, and with the lever pulled against the grip, break the bleeder bolt to bleed off fluid. Then close the bleeder bolt and release the brake lever. You're going to do this repeatedly, pressurizing the system and then bleeding off fluid until you see clear brake fluid come through the hose. Alright, feel that firm brake lever. This bike is done, but if you've got a modern motorcycle, you probably have a second caliper up front that needs to be bled, and don't forget your rear brakes. Also, remember that if you've replaced your brake pads or a rotor, you're going to need to give those components several hundred miles to bed in before they give you optimum performance. That's it for this episode from the MC Garage. Tune in 2 weeks for more tips and how-tos.